The stage is set. Two powerful teams stand face to face. Nova Pioneer Tatu Boys versus Kagumo High School. Fearless, ambitious, and ready to take on the challenge. They step onto the stage with one goal: to prove their voice belongs among the nation's best. The battle begins now. From the central region, we have a powerhouse, Kagumo High School, known for discipline, intellect, and a fighting spirit that never wavers. At the regionals, they stepped forward with confidence, ready to etch their name among Kenya's finest. Round after round, their arguments were precise, their delivery commanding, and their teamwork unshakable. The competition grew tougher, but Kagumo stood tall. Resilient, relentless, and determined, their journey carried them to the grand stage, the nationals. Next is Nova Pioneer Tatu Boys. From the heart of the metropolitan region, young, fearless, and ambitious. At the regionals, they stepped onto the stage determined to prove that they deserved a spot on the national stage. From the very first knockout, they displayed courage beyond their years. Every argument carried weight, every rebuttal delivered with boldness, and every victory pushed them further ahead. The competition intensified, but Nova rose to the challenge, united, confident, and unafraid. A journey that shows greatness is born in courage and sharpened in battle. Nova Pioneer Tatu Boys, rising giants of the national debate stage.
May's subsidy scheme, which was set in the year 2009, it failed in 2018 because of what? Two main things that we face every day in Kenya: corruption and mismanagement of funds. Corruption. However, they fail to understand that our model itself works because it's transparent.
A report by the KRA has proved that over 60% of people avoid paying tax.
Annual insurance industry report shows that only a total of 17.1% of Kenyans are actually covered by any insurance fee.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another episode here at the Debate Circle. We are in the Nationals 2025 quarterfinals. There's a lot of tension in the room here. Joining us for this particular round, we have Nova Pioneer Tatu Boys versus Kagumo High School. Their motion of dissection reads: mandatory insurance for all employed Kenyans is the only way to increase insurance penetration. All the best to both teams. Team proposition, first speaker, you had 3 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, when it rains, it pours. And the thing is, rain does not give you time to look for an umbrella. Rather, it does pause. On our side, we see that we give each and every single Kenyan an umbrella to protect them from the rain. And what? They're going to be dealt with what? Financial debt. But ladies and gentlemen, that's why I strongly propose the motion that states mandatory insurance for all employed Kenyans is the only way to increase insurance penetration. First and foremost, what is mandatory insurance? This is a legally enforced policy requiring all individuals under formal and informal sectors to be enrolled in an insurance scheme. Then next, employed Kenyans, all individuals earning an income through formal contracts, wage employment, or regular work. And insurance penetration, this is the proportion of the population that has active insurance. Who are the key actors? We see there is informal and formal sector workers. And one thing that they need is what? Financial security, medical security, and what? Income protection. On our side, we ensure that there's reduced economic shocks. Then the next thing, we have private insurance firms. What is their main goals? Their main goals is to do what? Profitability and market expansion. On our side, we see that there's massive increase in customer base. Ladies and gentlemen, as of right now, annual insurance industry report shows that only a total of 17.1% of Kenyans are actually covered by any insurance scheme. Imagine that, 17.1%. Ladies and gentlemen, we're not just solving access to insurance, but also the low uptake despite accessibility and the collapse of voluntary schemes already existing. What is the current status quo? First and foremost, we have insurance is largely voluntary, except for some salaried formal workers. And then at the same time, voluntary schemes won't work for a population with low financial literacy and mistrust of these already existing institutions. Then efforts like Linda Mama and UNC pilots in counties like Kisumu have faced issues Due to what? Due to inconsistent contributions. Ladies and gentlemen, that's where we come and give you a mechanism that's actually going to work and ensure that these problems are solved. First and foremost is what? Transparency, because we ensure that because we understand the main thing and the main reason why people do not go to these insurance firms, the fact that they believe that they're being scammed or they do not understand these jargons. So by us being transparent, they're actually going to be enrolled more. Why? Because they actually understand what this terminology is being used and they actually believe them. Then secondly, we're going to do what? Tiered contribution model, which is equity based. Through a progressive premium deduction of 2 or 5% of your income, we are going to ensure that you pay an amount according to the salary that you actually gain, and this is going to come back when you actually face a risk that you have been insured against. And then we can also target informal workers through deductions done through what? Circles, digital wallets, border associations, and Juakali umbrella services to ensure that everyone is being covered. Then through public and private partnership models, we're going to ensure that public insurance such as NHIF handles basic coverage and private firms offer top-up options. And this is going to do what? This is going to increase the amount of competition between private companies, which does what? Lowers cost and does what? Makes them focus on what? Innovation, increasing the quality of services actually provided to the customers. Ladies and gentlemen, integration with existing successful models such as Rwanda, where we have the Mutele de Sante. Ladies and gentlemen, it covers a total of 85% of its existing population. This is a community-based healthcare insurance which is actually set out in Rwanda. And it covers a total of 85% of its population. 85, and this is according to their own website of Rwanda Mutele de Sante. So ladies and gentlemen, let us kindly side with side proposition, because on our side, we give each and every single Kenyan an umbrella to prevent them from being drenching, soaked, and wet.
Members of the House, my fellow judges, I am hungry. I am very hungry, actually. Right now, was my breakfast heavy? No, it was just a simple cup of tea. And therefore, what does that mean? I have to eat. I have to eat because I am hungry, not being forced to eat because I already know what I have to do. Standing before you here is Ruben the Great from Kagumo High School, here to strongly, no, vehemently oppose this motion. The first thing we have to understand is the term mandatory. When we are talking about something being made mandatory, we are telling you, we are not telling you, we are forcing you to take it whether you like it or not. Members of the House, do you want that? We are telling you, no, it's a matter of trust. No, it is a matter of you have to do it. We are putting something mandatory in Kenya. Members of the House, let us understand one thing. We are in Kenya where things have been made mandatory before and they have failed drastically. And I have my sources. According to the Kenya Bureau of Statistics, maize subsidy scheme, which was set in the year 2009, that was placed in order to reduce the maize price in Kenya. It failed in 2018 because of what? Two main things that we face every day in Kenya: corruption and mismanagement of funds. Another one was the njaa marufuku. It was placed to eradicate Kenya in the year 2004. But it failed in 2009 because of one great thing, the same thing, corruption. And yet you are saying, place insurance coverage mandatory. What do we expect? At some point after 2 or 3 years, they'll just fail like the rest because our country is very high in corruption. Yes, on to my first point. Members of the House, according to the Kenya Bureau of Statistics, we are saying that 30% of citizens in Kenya are facing poverty up to today. And what does that tell us? Excuse me, Mama Mboga, excuse me. You're earning 50 shillings. Oh, yes, yes. Place 20 shillings in that insurance account. No, you have to place it. Do I want that? No, I want somewhere where I am trusting my money onto, where I understand what am I using with my money. Members of the House, we have to understand that we are forcing these poor people to actually place their money where they don't want to, and therefore they lack trust. Instead of telling them, focus on your child, focus on something that really matters, you are forcing them to actually take a stand and telling them, you don't have an option, members of the House, you don't have an option, you have to. Do you really want that? I don't think so. The other thing is that inefficiencies in the mandatory systems. Members of the House, currently insurance coverage are still facing internal problems. Therefore, that means make the system mandatory. They have even more people to serve. And if they have internal problems, what does that simply mean?
they will be unable to actually give the right services to these people. Members of the House, I am not resting my case.
There's a duke and a legend after me.
Ladies and gentlemen, the first speakers come here before, and he has completely misunderstood the motion. In fact, he's come and told us that this itself, this initiative that they're proposing, has gave us a lot of examples. However, they failed to provide for us a proper mechanism. On top of that, we said that our model is based on transparency. Yes. They came and told us that corruption. However, they failed to understand that our model itself works because it's transparent. And you know what? We even gave you real life examples, ladies and gentlemen, where countries have institutionalized these things. Then on top of that, they also brought out the idea that it's going to be expensive. However, on top of that, we told you that our model is progressive. Hence, it ensures that every single citizen is actually equipped and is going to be covered. And that takes me now to my first point, which is focusing on voluntary insurance has repeatedly failed to scale. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the truth of the matter is when we make these insurance policies very voluntarily, it's going to crumble. And let me give you a good example. In Uganda, in the year 2021, they passed a bill through the National Health Insurance Scheme. And the main idea was to cover most employed citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, here's the kicker. Within 2 years, only 8% were covered. Do you know why? Because they left it to be optional. Ladies and gentlemen, this itself causes a financial burden to the very institutions that even try to push for these very things. And then on top of that, I'll give you another statistic. Did you know in Rwanda, where my first speaker came and told us that they tried the same thing, and 90% of citizens were actually covered. Ladies and gentlemen, that itself shows something important. That itself shows that we're trying to ensure and prevent these citizens from having economic shocks. However, then, on top of that, when we look at the statistics of the same thing with the country of Uganda, only 0.8% of insurance penetration stood in the year 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a calling to every single member of us to ensure that this thing is very mandatory because it prevents us from financial shocks. Now let's look at the impacts of this. The first and foremost, it stalls SDG number 3. Ladies and gentlemen, SDG number 3 focuses on good health and well-being. If we do not make these very things mandatory, it stalls the very development of our goals. And then it takes me now to my second point, which is driving financial inclusion and resilience in a changing world. Now, let me explain by that. The truth is, there are global shocks. Global shocks, for example, in the current status quo, there might be diseases, unpredictable financial instability, and even weather terrible changes. How are we going to ensure that our very own citizens are protected if they decide to opt out? But let me give you a great example. A country whereby which they made this very insurance compulsory. In Germany, in the year 2009, they ensured that the majority of the citizens are covered in terms of their health insurance. All right, maybe perhaps you might come and say, how did that help? Ladies and gentlemen, fast forward 10 years, COVID-19 strikes, and everybody is in a shock. However, Germany itself was able to survive because of the highly mandatory health insurance coverage policies. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to call you to support our team because we believe in the very good of our citizens, and we want to protect our country and ensure its development, not by the opposition. Thank you.
An umbrella. Transparency. Naivety is what I hear in my ears. Today, members of the House, I come as a patriot. I come as a person with a fire burning for a future, for a Kenya that is inspired to make a better tomorrow. Therefore, my fellow architects of our nation's prosperity, listen to me. Listen to me. I have come to clearly, vehemently, adamantly oppose the motion that states mandatory insurance for all employed Kenyans is the only way to increase insurance penetration. I want us to understand very fundamental things. First, side opposition is not denying that insurance is important. No, we are not saying that that is the problem. We are simply trying to say that making it mandatory will affect its efficiency. How? Okay. Side proposition has given great examples. Rwanda, Uganda. I applaud you for your intellect and research. But members of the House, I stand before you with one aim, one focus: to deny imitation and start innovation. Innovation. I trust and believe in each and every one of you in this house that he can make a difference. Your ideas are values. From the judges to the audience, each and every one of you, your ideas are inspired. They are funded to make a difference tomorrow. Let me give you a statistic. For example, the M-Pesa. It is a revolutionary success. And it was not implied or implemented by forcing, but innovation. Members of the House, innovation, not imitation. Do we force compliance, or do we spark a revolution with inspired solution? That is the question I ask you. Steve Jobs said, so as to be a leader, we need to innovate. We need to innovate. And this brings me to my second point. That's solidifying what is already present can make a difference. I want you to understand one thing, members of the House, that Kenya is not on the wrong track. We are already putting stuff like financial literacy in place. The very banks which are financing the very banks which are financing us to speak on this podium today, they're already adapting, they're already putting things that can help our country. And solidifying what is already present, other than changing, other than trying to make things mandatory, is a way better option. Because, like my first speaker said, if you're hungry, members of the House, you do not need to be told to go and eat, because you understand its importance. You understand that, yes, as an individual, I need to make a difference. Yes, as an individual, I need to be safe. And what will ensure me being safe? It is insurance. As I finish, I just want to leave one statistic. Mobile-based platforms like FIBA have reached over 1.5 million users, making insurance more accessible. This increased mobile insurance uptake by 50% from 2019 to 2023. Members of the House, this wasn't inspired by forcing, it was inspired by their innovation and their understanding of its importance. Side proposition: take a better stance for the better of our nation. Before you is Joshua Mwenda, the legend. Thank you.
Beginning of this debate, the first speaker from side opposition said that he is a very hungry man. And you know what? I do believe him, because his case is very frail. Let's look at what they've come here and told us. First of all, they did not understand what this debate is about. This debate is about finding the most effective, scalable means of which we can increase the number of Kenyans who have been insured, right? But they came here and said that, you know what? It is unfair for the informal sector because they cannot pay. But I'm here to tell you something. Who suffers most when uninsured? Who suffers most when they have to pay 200,000 because they fell down from the border? Who suffers most when their kibanda burns down? Who suffers most? It is these people you're talking about. If 20 bob was a problem, what about when it is 200,000 for your sick child? You see what we're saying? By making it mandatory, we give everyone a seatbelt, not because we expect a crash, people. It is because we care and we understand that we cannot predict some of the things in this world. Why does this matter? Because you see, when they say this, they're clearly deviating from the motion. They're disregarding the status quo and not understanding that these people in the informal sector need insurance. We are not just giving them a restriction, we are giving them a pathway to financial security. They also said that, why not choose other methods? Subsidies, SACCOs, these are the things they spoke about. But I'm here to tell you something. You cannot solve problems with the same mindset that we used to create them. They have been tried and they have failed, and our penetration still remains under 18%. If these methods are really effective, how comes nothing is changing? How are we seeing the same still having these low methods of penetration? We see that mandatory service works, and we have seen it even happening in our country. Think about NHIF. Think about the NSSF. These are examples of programs that have used mandatory insurance, and we have had people enter insurance programs. We even told you the example of Rwanda, which they have not addressed. Now, why do we win this debate? We told you that voluntary membership has failed to scale up. We gave you an example of Uganda, where we only had below 8% scaling down. And They came here and said, you know what, these systems corrupt, these systems can't work because the same people who are put in power will going to misuse the system. But then ask you the same question. Is the problem the policy itself or the people who are putting it in place? We must not question a policy simply because the people in place are misusing it. No, what we must do is change the people who were put in place to make these policies. The policy itself is effective, but the systems behind it are the problem. If we follow our mechanism, a progressive, transparent, and accountable means of making this insurance mandatory, we will not have any of these problems. We have offered you a pool of financial security, inclusion, and progressiveness. It would be foolish not to dive in. Career Money, proud to propose.
In a world where freedom is but a mere rhetoric, it is where the true measure of a society lies in the ability of its capacity to empower its citizens, not by force, but rather by enlightenment. That is why I am standing here as Caleb from the Kagumo High School with conviction, not but a point from conjecture, but empirical recognition that mandatory insurance will not only stifle our Kenyans, but it will also burden them. First of all, I think I heard your second speaker talk about Rwanda. And I'll tell you something, I'll address the Rwanda situation. Rwanda, according to the International Labour Organization, has 69% of its population in the informal sector. Kenya has 80% of the population in the informal sector. Can you compare Kenya and Rwanda? They are different socio-economic structures, and that is why we cannot apply the same policies they are using. Let us first deal with the people in the informal sector, then you can come and talk to me about mandatory insurance. Second of all, I think I heard you people talking about Germany, but frankly speaking, Germany has robust infrastructure, strong economic policies, structures that are standing in. Germany is a first world country. We are a third world. Why don't we work on economy first before we start making insurance mandatory? Second of all, we are talking about youth in the informal sector. And why Kenyans in the informal sector, who are employed in the informal sector, why will they suffer? Kenyans are already burdened with several kinds of taxes that most of the Kenyan adults are paying. We are paying NHIF, we are paying NSSF, we are paying PAYE, we are paying housing levy, of which most of it we are not seeing it going to. You said that NHIF works, but frankly speaking, even with the new implementation and the new policy that has been put in place, we are seeing problems that have been encountered in shift, yet it is mandatory. We have had cases of Kenyans complaining that they are paying taxes, they are paying contributing part of their salary to these mandatory insurance schemes, yet nothing of substance is happening. You claim you want solutions, I'll give you solutions. Micro insurance schemes that have been tailored for the informal sector. We have micro insurance schemes such as the Jamii Fund that are working to ensure that Kenyans in the informal sector and formal sector are understanding the importance of insurance. You cannot tell me to pay for something that I cannot understand for. You cannot tell me to pay for something. Kenya has had a history of forcing things on Kenyans. Kenya has had a history of making Kenyans to pay for things they're not seeing the results of. If I am paying for insurance, I want to see the results. And if I cannot see the results, if I do not understand the importance of it, I won't pay for it. A report by the KRA has proved that over 60% of people avoid paying taxes. So if Kenyans are already avoiding paying taxes, such as paying NHF and SSF, how can you expect them to pay for mandatory insurance claims? I don't think they'll pay for it. Will you pay for it? I don't think you'll pay for it, because frankly speaking, if we are seeing such challenges, people are escaping the mild forms of taxes that are meant to pay for your education, taxes that are meant to pay for subsidies, taxes that are meant to improve the life of the common mwananchi. If we are not seeing the result of that, and I'm not seeing the importance of it, how do you expect me to pay for mandatory insurance? You want to increase insurance penetration? I'll tell you to increase insurance penetration. We can also ensure that we change the entire insurance system. For example, Shift and SHA have been criticized for their inefficiencies, corruption, and the bureaucracy that has been involved in these financial institutions. Now, what we can do is, thank you for supporting the motion on our side, we can change the systems and ensuring that you don't ensure that a car which is broken down works by just changing the tires. You're working on repairing a vehicle that is already broken down by just fixing the tires. You fix the entire car, and then maybe you can become a Formula 1 driver. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I say I love you, I say I care for you. I say that I am fighting for the unity of Kenyans and for the progression of Kenya. Yet I allow you to go through financial instability. I allow you to go through financial shocks. I allow there to be an increase in the lack of medical care due to the lack of funds. Do I really love you? Do I really care for you? That is the major question. Ladies and gentlemen, on our side, we see that we actively solve SDG number 3, which is good health and well-being, and actively take part in solving SDG number 11, which is what? No poverty. On their side, they come up and say that, you know what? We do not want to take up policies or things that have already been implemented in different countries. We are not taking the same approach, but rather we are gaining inspiration. Ladies and gentlemen, we learn from the mistakes of our neighbors, and that's what a wise man does. A wise man does not just start something out of the blue, but they build up on the shoulders of people who have failed before them. And that is what we are trying to do, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to understand that on our side, we give a long-term solution. We simplify procedures and we ensure there is no exploitation. The cover pen tell us, oh, the policy will fail because what? It has already been implemented. People are not paying taxes. It's because they do not trust the leaders in place and the policies being put in place. Why? Because they simply do not understand them and they feel as though they are being what? They're being exploited. But on our side, we come and tell you what we are going to do. What ensure that there is what that there is transparency for the people to feel as though they are being understood and the people are actually understanding what is happening and they are going to feel as though they are part of it and not being excluded from it and not being exploited. Ladies and gentlemen, we love you. We care for you. That's why we give you this policy. Thank you.
Yes, we are trying to enable Kenyans to avoid shocks. But frankly speaking, we never, and I repeat, we never, now if you had ears, you'd actually listen, we never accepted that insurance is it's not necessary for Kenyans. Yes, Kenyans need insurance, but what we are against is mandatory as the only way. It is not, we are accepting, it might be used, but it is not the viable solution given the current socio-economic conditions in our country today. Number two, we have talked about people not being avoid for people not affording to pay for their health bills. That is frankly a concern which also we are addressing. But frankly speaking, if you make something insurance, you're adding to them more deductions than what they're actually supposed to be paying for. If you educate them, they'll be seeing insurance as an investment, not a deduction. But right now, Kenyans are struggling under the economic struggles that they are facing. SDG number 1 talks about no poverty. And in line with this goal, we want to ensure that no Kenyan is excluded from acquiring the services which they paid for. So teach them the importance of insurance first, then come and tell me to make it mandatory. Thank you.
All right. The motion reads, mandatory insurance for all employed Kenyans is the only way to increase insurance cooperation. Nova Pioneer, very powerful style and presentation. Kagumo High, furious rebuttals there. Now, individual speakers. Eddie, there is something about you and style and presentation. Wonderful. But bro, you need to moderate your pace. Are we there? There is a difference between speaking and communication. Are we there? So that makes your ideas not come out clearly. And remember, when the ideas are not captured well, then convincing the panel becomes a problem. But you're a very eclectic debater. Just moderate on your pace and you'll hammer the points home and dry. At the same time, Eddie, being a first speaker, I wish you could have also gone ahead to just, although you mentioned the Rwanda example where it has worked, but you realize it came towards the very end. So these are some of the strong arguments to begin with. And then you bring on board your examples. For example, if you say there is collapse of voluntary schemes that have been existing and you don't mention any of them. When you say mistrust of existing covers, you don't mention any of them. So that leaves your arguments not well supported, but you have a lot of potential. Kagumo High, Ruben, that breakfast analogy and the hunger analogy, I was waiting to hear the link back to the motion. In fact, you gave Kerry an opportunity to demolish you properly because he accused you of being hungry and frail. That is why your points were frail, and that gave him a score for style and presentation. So make sure when you give an introduction, you ensure it's well linked to the motion. And then Kerry, no, Ruben, you need to be time conscious, and also you also need to vary your tone. And then you mentioned about the NHIF. We thought from the judge's desk, this could have been a good point for you to say, hey, we have NHIF that is working and we don't need to make these things mandatory because if modified, NHIF can do wonders and all that. The success stories of NHIF, that could have given you a very good starting point. Now for Israel, that's a big name by the way. Israel, you also need to give us clear rebuttals In fact, you brought on board the global perspective of Germany when the time was up. This was a very good point for you to start. That is, as it has worked in Germany, though Caleb gave a rebuttal to that, but you could have started with the Germany success stories and then you bring down to Kenya so that you score your case. Kerry, you're the vanguard to your team, spoke in measured tones, hit home very hard. Just work on building up more solid rebuttals which are backed with case studies. But your stage confidence, wonderful. Caleb, you equally stood out for your team. You're the elephant for your team. Very passionate. You roasted the German example given by talking about different social strata. However, Caleb, I'll bring you to order. Kenya is not a third world country. Just check on that. So the question we had in our mind is, if you guys are saying mandatory insurance is not the way to go, what is the way to go? That was a huge gap in terms of your content, which if you could have brought on board, your scores could have gone ahead. Otherwise, remember, it's a learning experience. All the best, guys.
Thank you very much, judges, for that feedback. I'll go straight to announcing the results. The judges have awarded Nova Pioneer Tatu Boys with 63.29%. A round of applause, please, for Nova Pioneer Tatu Boys. And the judges have awarded Kagumo High School with 61.66%. A round of applause, please, for Kagumo High School, making Nova Pioneer Tatu Boys the winners of this round with 63.29%. A round of applause, please, for the winning team. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of yet another episode here at the Debate Circle. Until next time, it's goodbye from us, and I have been your host, Jane Cheng. Remember to follow all our social media handles. That's at the Debate Circle. Goodbye.